give it a couple turns and it will grow, and he just needs the aggression. He needs to put Gray on the back foot. He can't give Gray all the time in the world.
Right, so if you guys are just tuning in, this is round 3. We have Blue Red Miracles versus Rug Delver, and we have a Sensei's Divining Top playing around the days here.
You think he had that turn 1 and played around this?
I definitely think so.
If he had, he would have played around it, certainly.
Yeah, especially game 1, when you know you're playing against a Delver deck, I would always play around days when you're trying to resolve a threat that good.
Yeah.
Sensei's Divining Top. And I call it a threat knowing that I'm calling it a threat. It is the best card in their deck.
I agree. It's really what makes the whole world go around, so to speak. And Nick with face, you attack. What we want to be doing.
So we don't see red sources fetched from Nick, which is kind of interesting, and then a pass. So
yeah, I was going to mention that. You would assume that he had the third land to get the red source. Maybe his hand isn't green heavy, but I can't see that being the case.
Yeah, I think the only green cards in his deck are actually Nimble Mongoose and Tarmogoyf.
Okay.
So having 2 Trops in play against a Miracle deck, which isn't like interacting with your land base, seems kind of redundant.
Sure. And here we have an instep brainstorm. So Nick looking for something. If we're pricing to doing that, do you think maybe doing that on main phase?
Yeah, even as the aggressive deck, doing it on main phase is definitely what you want to do.
And Gray, all the time in the world, content with just making land drops and kind of sculpting the top of his library in his hand with the top in play. Here we have a second Mongoose, so Gray, if he has the ability to set up a terminus, he might be a little bit more incentivized to do so.
Right. The thing about the Rug deck, too, is that it actually can interact with the Miracles besides counterspells, because stifling a Miracle actually quote-unquote counters the spell.
That's very good.
It does just put it in their hand, but it makes it so that he has to somehow put it on top again, either with a Brainstorm or a Jace Brainstorm, something like that.
And that effect is not free. With the exception of Jace being in play, putting a card from your hand onto the top of your deck is a very powerful resource.
Yeah, definitely. So we see Vendilion flashed in, and if we're probably just going to see a block here, but we have a Force of Will, which will bring Nick down to, I believe, 17 now, actually.
This could indicate one of 2 things. Nick's hand is very good. He assumes that Gray will be targeting him. Or he's threat light, which that seems to be the case.
Yeah, when you're playing out your Mongooses first instead of like your Tarmogoyf Delvers, it definitely is an indication that you're probably threat light. But we do see Tarmogoyf in hand, so we have...
Interesting. Maybe not trying to play in the Terminus. With those bolts in hand, they may have been draw steps, but him not getting a Volcanic Island is a little suspect to me.
Yeah, definitely. We are probably going to take a Spell Snare here, depending on his hands.
Is this Spell Snare?
It is Spell Snare.
Modern staple, coming to play in Legacy.
There's not a lot of flex slots in Rug Delver, but there are some. So it's usually Spell Snare, a Flusterstorm I've seen before in really combo heavy metas, Forked Bolt if you're playing always Death Taxes.
Or if there's 3 elves in your top 8,
yeah,
as there was in the Open in Las Vegas last weekend.
Forked Bolt can be very good. So there's a number of Fire and Ice as well is like one of the slots that it can be.
Yeah, it turns out. 15 might have been better.
So here's Gray fetching. We sit in the top of his deck, getting a couple of fresh looks. As far as I know, Nick has been playing at the shop for a good while, and you can associate him with this Rug Delver.
Yeah, he's moved decks a couple times, going to blue-red, going to some other decks that I can't remember right now, but it's kind of his pet deck. You always kind of know him for Rug Delver.
Sure. And Gray's been playing Miracles for a while, still familiarizing himself with the mechanics. He plays the deck very well, but it's an intricate deck that requires a lot of knowledge of your own mechanics to pilot.
Since Rug Delver has moved out of popularity, I actually haven't seen this interaction yet. Council's Judgment on Nibble Mongoose, another creature to get around the protection, or another card to get around the protection.
And so the 3-1 did resolve, blocking the second Mongoose. Here we have a Ponder.
I might have just liked to see the Tarmogoyf there.
If we didn't have the land, which we know his hand and he didn't, I would have just slammed the guy. You're not guaranteed to hit a land, and you need to continue the pressure. Gray at a comfortable 15, the 3 cards in hand and an active top is pretty ahead this game.
Definitely ahead this game. We need to see a threat here from Nick. Hopefully, see a volcanic island or a fetch land here to be able to play that.
And that was key right here.
Very key. And that way too, he gets to keep his cards on top, not him actually getting a physical volcanic island rather than a fetch land.
I believe we saw a pass from Nick, which is curious to me. I don't know if you can afford to just give the... Like, he wants to keep up the spell snare, but I'm not sure...
He might be giving too much power to the counterbalance.
Yeah.
I think sometimes you just can't play around it. You're just giving him too much time.
When Gray knows about your days and your spell snare, chances are he's not running out this counterbalance in a spot that you can get it.
Right.
And so if that's the case, we can't beat him playing the card anyways. That's not what the game's about anymore. And here's a good draw. If he wants to keep up those cards that we mentioned, the 1-mana threat is the second best, I suppose. And I believe this is on the stack. We have top and response. And this is really the card that I see. When the Miracles deck has this card in play, it seems like a very powerful force. And when it doesn't, it just seems very... If it doesn't draw the cards that it needs to, it doesn't do anything, it seems to me.
Yeah. Definitely.
And Gray being able to catch the swords and then a few of Nick's threats are hexproof is very strong. And this Jason on open board seems to be running away with it.
Yeah, we're just going to see him go up, get him out of bolt range, and so he will be able to kind of keep his Jace in play for any time Nick wants to play a threat, and later on in the game, if he sees that he only has one lightning bolt still in hand, he'll just.
I was about to ask you about. So I think we're price him to double bolting this Jace. Nick's on that line, and well, on the surface it seems bad. Are those bolts doing anything otherwise?
Probably not. No, but we'd have to see the bolt. Like if he didn't see his the other two cards from the Ponder, I would definitely wouldn't have bolted the Jace there.
Sure. I think he had the bolt in hand. I think he had the 2 bolts in hand.
He already had bolted once to the face.
Ooh.
So we only had only one bolt in hand.
Oh, and then, yeah, I don't like that unless I knew that we had the 3rd bolt. Once again, Nick plays the deck a little bit more than I have, because I have not played it at all. And here we have Goy. Look into the Mob's Jace. Not looking strong.
Yeah,
correct?
It's probably not the play that we'll see, but Gray can honestly just bounce 2 turns in a row, and that would tempo Nick enough out of this game to where Gray would be able to resolve an even bigger threat like an On-Treat the Angels.
I've talked to resident Miracles quote-unquote expert in Andrew Dante James, and he says if you can brainstorm with your Jace, you probably win the game.
Right.
And so Gray, recognizing that the strength of that play, not ignoring the Tarmogoyf, swordsing it, no, we have a Force of Will, targeting the swords, and here we don't have a fight. Gray understands that Nick's hand is light on action, so this is something we're fighting over.
Definitely, and when we saw he knew he brainstormed into the Force, it's unlikely that he brainstormed into Force another blue card, and so the Force Will is likely to resolve there, and then we see a counterbalance.
A huge drop, or a huge turn from Gray, being able to handle Nick's threat and resolve the counterbalance, and the Swords of Plowshare might not even have been the spell that we care about, we got to resolve it, but maybe the counterbalance was the real prize.
Definitely, and this will probably lock Nick out of the game. If Gray can keep a 1 and a 2 on top, there's actually no spells in Nick's deck that he can actually cast.
No True Name Nemesis?
I don't believe there's True Name Nemesis. I think the deck wants to operate on 1 to 2 mana.
Okay.
So getting to 3 is unlikely.
Sure.
It's not like the other decks where they have a late game with like Stoneforge where they don't mind getting to 5 mana.
Right.
If Rug Delver gets to 5 mana, they're probably losing that game.
Fair enough. I can get behind that, yeah. Gray here with the old soft lock. Let's see if it turns into the hard lock. And with Jace being able to put cards in play and no trigger on the counterbalance, so that resolves. But Nick with a little life yet, but in here we have a Miracle Turnus.
So Tarmogoyf going to go to the bottom, and we'll continue to get brainstorm off this Jace. Just keep on hitting land drops and waiting for a win condition.
Turns out that's pretty good. And those fetch lands in play are huge. They're allowing resets, a lot of looks at the top of his deck. Gray seems to be in firm control here.
However, we do see a runner from Nick, so still putting up a fight.
What he needs to be in this game, but
we do
here
see
was his
the
Snapcaster Mage, the lone Snapcaster. 2 is actually, with the exception of Counterbalance, there's only the other, Snapcaster Mage is the only other 2 in the deck. 2 is something that can get under the Counterbalance, I believe.
Right, you generally lock out 1s, and then get either 2s or 3s or 4s.
Mm-hmm.
It's very unlikely, like, when you do get the 1 and the 2, you feel real good.
I don't see how Nick can come back from this. He doesn't have a card like Abrupt Decay, say, to get him under this Counterbalance.
Right. So from here on out, almost every single one of his spells
getting
get
giving it the old college try.
He can
Can't fault him for that.
he can hold cards in his hands and devise a way where he can resolve a spell. However, if Gray actually has the 1 on top and not just essentially his Riding Top in play, there's literally no way he's going to resolve a spell this game.
I agree. And that,
so this will probably be. We're going to play it out. No, we're going to skip that. Okay, there we go. So that's kind of what I was talking about with the Miracles versus the Rug Delver. Is that Rug Delver's clock isn't fast enough to where they can like attack a land base that can't. They just don't interact with the Miracles deck at all. They can't attack their land base. They can't reset the clock. And so when Miracles is on 4 lands, and of course maybe you've hit with Delver 3 times, they're still at 11, and they still have spells to interact with you. They run Terminus, Supreme Verdict, Jace to bounce your Delver. They have V-Click to block your Delver, as we saw block the Noble Mongoose there. He's definitely willing to trade a single Vendilion Click for a single Nimble Mongoose.
Absolutely.
So definitely a lot of ways that Gray can interact with the Rug Delver deck, but the Rug Delver deck can't interact with the Miracles deck.
Yeah, we saw that game. Nick had a turn 2 threat. It was a 1-1, but it was where he needed to be.
Yeah.
And at no point in that game did I feel like Gray was under the gun at all. Gray seemed comfortable in his life total, the number of cards in. You say in hand, but on top of his deck via the top, it feels like an extension of the hand.
Definitely. He had, virtually 7 cards in hand at any point in that game. Played around the turn 1 days by casting his top on turn 2.
Very safe as a play from Gray.
Very safe, very good. And Nick, just Nick not being able to actually have a threat get an irrelevant amount of damage.
And we saw some sequencing possible missteps from Nick, but I'm not sure even if he had fetched for the Volcanic the turn he needed to, and if he had played the Goyf turn earlier, I don't know if that would have been able to
maybe not
win.
Yeah, I don't think it's enough to get a win there. We did see a lot of good cards from Gray. We saw Council's Judgment, Nimble Mongoose, Vendilion Click, take a card from Nick's hand and also block a Nimble Mongoose. A lot of 2-for-1s there that I don't think Nick came back from.
Gray is notorious for drawing exceptionally well. I call him a luck sack. A few of our friends agree.
When you're playing a deck and you always give yourself the edge, to where you're always making the right play, always giving yourself the chance to get lucky, more of a chance to get the card off the top, it's likely that you're going to see it more often than others.
I took that to the wire, man. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's what I was kind of saying about Rug Delver too. Is Dan mentioned in the comments is that Blue, White, Red, and Bug Delver both have kind of a late game. Blue, White, Red has Stoneforge Mystic. They can just go Stoneforge Mystic, True Name Nemesis, Batter Skull on turn 7, and it's totally sweet. Any number of the spells. Where the Rug deck, its best threat is Nimble Mongoose, Tarmogoyf. If you can play Delver on turn 1, that's their best threat. If it's later in the game, if their best threat is Tarmogoyf, then that's not much at all. A single Abrupt Decay.
I've definitely seen the Blue, White, Red Delver deck go very long against the Miracles deck and stay afloat. I've seen the Delver deck beat Miracles turn 12.
Yeah, or even the Bug deck having Tombstalker, Liliana the Veil, all cards that are very just very impactful on the board state, and even Deathrite Shaman to be able to kind of supplement their own life total or drain the opponent for 2. It's just a threat that's available to you on turn 1 to ramp you, and then also just kind of close out the game.
Absolutely.
But the right deck, very good deck, kind of meta dependent, I think, to more of a combo heavy. if you're seeing a lot of combo, but still very good in realistically any sort of.
Fair. So we talk about these new iterations. I say new, but newer iterations of this tempo, this Delver strategy.
Right.
Do you think? I mean, we've seen some success in the Open Series with Rug Delver. It's done well. Do you think that there is room for this deck, or are the other options, your other color pies, pushing this deck out of contention?
I've actually had a lot of conversations about this recently with Gray, actually, who's playing right now. We have. I always say that Rug Delver is the best Delver deck, and I still agree with that. I just don't think it's the most well positioned right now.
Okay.
I think that probably Bug Delver is more well positioned, and then
A
followed
little
by
bit better to play these grindy affairs.
Right. There's especially in this greater Seattle area. There's a lot of death taxes. There's a lot of miracles, elves, and I think that the bug in American Delver, where you're allowed to go later on in the game, and then you have more like removal spells, and then like post board from the bug deck, they have like just
Disruption.
way more disruption because they're in black. I think that those decks have a better chance in the greater Seattle area right now. But Rug Delver, I still believe, is the best Delver deck, and I'm comfortable saying
A
that.
little bit more tuned, more defined. Here we are underway.
So slow start from Nick. We do see fetch land at the end of turn. I think we saw Brainstorm too. So stuff's going on, but not a whole lot. We don't have a threat from Nick here.
Both these games, we've seen Nick lead with the cantrips rather than the threats, and I think you need that order to be reversed for this matchup.
Yeah, I think you want to see your threats early on, and then kind of have your brainstorms and ponders either like flipping your delvers or finding you answers to whatever Gray's playing while you still have a threat on the
Giving
field.
you a little bit more staying power throughout the
Right.
middle of the game, because we've established we don't want to go to the late game. Our deck can't hang.
So we play a Tarmogoyf on turn 3, and literally no way to reset Gray's board here, because we don't have... Wasteland isn't good, and neither of those are fetch lands.
Sure.
This is kind of what Gray wants, is a single threat on turn 3 he can definitely deal with. We'll probably see a land drop here, and
Imagine he'll continue to play around days.
Yeah.
Potentially. Just jam. Let's go.
jam a Council's Judgment.
I'm not sure if I think this might be a little hasty from Gray. Especially with no way to fight over the days. I might have waited a turn.
He might have won
time.
Well, if he played Tundra there, we know he probably doesn't have a basic in hands.
Or another land even.
Yeah, so it's likely that he just wants to run out his removal spells, which he's heavy on, because I think he actually runs more removal spells in his deck than Nick runs threats.
Right.
Totally
So
fine.
we see a main phase brainstorm from Nick, possibly sensing some weakness from Gray, trying to capitalize, maybe try to get another threat on the table. Gray without a top. Nick may be more willing to throw some cards onto the table in the face of a potential terminus.
Right. So, yeah, at this point, I think Nick is either trying to find another threat or is just trying to main phase, weigh his options, find some counter spells to counter whatever Gray is trying to do to get rid of this Tarmogoyf. But we see a pass here with 2 mana up. We see a Brainstorm from Gray here. Honestly, in that position, if I had a Red Blast there, I'd probably counter it, but we don't see it happening. It's definitely worth countering Brainstorm.
That's a play that I know that when I'm playing Legacy, I don't think about enough, but when players are brainstorming from a position of weakness, main phasing without a fetch land in play, here we see Gray getting one, like I said.
Well, he might have had it in hand.
Might have had it. But and so there's that kind of sub game of, is he playing it because he needs these cards, or is he showing me weakness so that I counter it?
I think it was.
Gray with a little take backsies, wanted to get basic mountain, and then realized he had a flooded trans sacrificing. So here we go for basic island.
There's been many moves.
And I almost think that Gray doesn't need to play around the wasteland. He already has one land that is susceptible. Nick has shown that he doesn't have it yet. I might have gone for a volcanic there. And here's Gray with rest in peace. Very strong, very potent against the threshold mechanics from Nick's side. And yeah, a must force from Nick. wondering what. And when you stumble like that, when you hesitate on discarding a card, yeah. Now we see Flusterstorm for 4. So Gray might win this counterspell war. Rest in peace on the stack. Force of Will targeting Rest in Peace. Flusterstorm with 4 copies targeting Nick's Force of Will.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's a Brainstorm, the Rest in Peace, the Force, and the Flusterstorm cast. And that Rest in Peace resolves, and that could be enough to steal this game. Nick needs... His only other potent threat is a Delver.
Right, because Nimble Mongoose is always going to be a 1-1 with Rest in Peace in play. And Tarmogoyf is going to be his 0-1.
Turns out...
Actually, no power.
Turns out when you don't have a graveyard, Tarmogoyf does not do damage. Who knew?
Very good card against the Run Delver deck. Also, also gets sided in against like the Bug Delver decks or the Reanimator combo decks. Rest in Peace, really value card.
Yeah, I agree. When there's so many powerful synergies with your graveyard, a lot of decks use it as an extension of their hand, a way to cheat in these big monsters as you indicated, or a way to... There's certain cards that are enhanced by the graveyard. An effect to remove it when you're not required to be playing around it. I'm not sure. Do you think Gray leaves in the Snapcaster Mage? Or do you think Gray, that's one of the slots that come out for the...
I might actually leave him in. It blocks a weak Nimble Mongoose.
Ambush Viper, right?
But yeah, it's an Ambush Viper. It blocks an Unflip Delver, that kind of thing. It also, if you don't have Rest in Peace, like Snapcaster Swords is still a really good play. And I don't think you mind having like one dead card in your deck if you see your other good card. Like if you have Rest in Peace in play, I think you're fine having Snapcaster.
Sure. And here we see Gray. So Nick maybe indicating that it resolved, but then possibly realizing that, I actually have the Red Blast, let's give it a counterspell. And interesting, Nick paying for the probe. I'm sure that's necessary. A little frustration from Nick. He's not getting any action.
So we see counterbalance here, and that won't lock out the game yet. We don't have a Sensei's Divining Top, but it is very tough for Nick to fight around the counterbalance.
Absolutely. But this is one of the things where Gray's cards have lined up, but he hasn't been in this, like... Nick has somewhat been in the game.
Right.
With the exception of the Rest in Peace. I mean, sure, we have a Terminus on top.
That's actually like one of my favorite interactions, is not flipping from counterbalance to counter your spell, but flipping a spell that interacts with the spell you just cast.
Sure.
So Terminus on your Nimble Mongoose.
So what are Nick's draws? He needs a threat, correct?
Yeah, it's Delver and Nimble Mongoose. Like Nimble Mongoose probably isn't getting there, but it's...
How do you feel about Nick paying for these probes? He's not doing anything with his mana otherwise. What if his probe draws him into something that has to be with mana?
The first one I didn't necessarily agree with, because he could have drawn a 2-mana spell, whatever one he may have in his deck. Tarmogoyf, not that good, but I can't imagine any other 2-mana spell, but he could have it.
Why is Gray fetching? We don't. The top of the deck is unknown, correct?
No, he flipped off the Jit Crocus, and so now he's going to try to get another flip here.
Oh, okay.
So we see another land.
Okay.
So this is actually looking not too bad from Nick, even though counterbalance is in play. We see... Oh, so we do fetch away. Gray is not going to be drawing the island, but, I mean, Delver in play and no cards in Gray's hand.
Gray needs to find something and quick.
Yeah, a 5-turn clock is not the best that can come from the Rug Delver deck, but it's fast enough when when your opponent's not drawing any action.
It is a spell, and you see here, I'm not sure Gray would... And the blind flip must be nice.
Blind flip force even.
Here's events in your hand from Gray, so trigger on the stack. I think we're going to see this bad boy
and that's,
in.
Like, short of Entreat the Angels or something of the sort, I think that's the best spell we could have seen here.
So that's a bit of a lock.
So now we have Rest in Peace in play. His only relevant threat is Delver. His other threat, Nimble Mongoose, only does 1 damage, so he's actually, like, almost locked out of this game.
I'm gonna call it. I don't think Nick needs to have like running bolts to handle this, and he only has the one red source in play. Possibly can respond to a Croc's activation.
So counterspell now going to be in Gray's hand next turn. So we have counterspell, counterbalance, and Professor Crocus.
Move all the terrain. And then afterwards, we have to move all the terrain back now. Even like the big.
And Gray playing it safe, not returning his Venser there, just in case he had the bolts. We will see
go around and reset all the tables once.
a bounce from bounce of Venser there, and we see another blind flip.
And then there were
So Nick could use this stifle in combination with a bolt. We know about the counterspell in his hand. This Force Will doesn't seem like it's going.
This isn't mine. Mine are blue ones.
Do we have a Daze in hand? Daze would be really good here.
Daze would be very good, but we did just see Pyroblast off the top.
Sure, so how much do we value this Delver anyways?
Yeah. So Delver's going back in hands. Stifle for his draw step. And we'll see a Delver coming back. Oh, Tarmogoyf. Okay.
How's it going, the militia? How are you doing tonight?
You
got a 0-1 in play, because we have Rest in Peace. We did not see a Delver. Do we have any ways to interact with Rest in Peace after its trigger is already resolved?
I do not believe so.
Yes. So we see another Delver, and we have Delver Tarmogoyf in play. We have On-Shoot the Angels off the top. So this is probably, we see Stifle.
I'm proxying a unit problem.
Probably a Red Blast on this Stifle, yeah. And then we get, like, even just 2 Angels, 1 Angel would be enough.
It's going to be 4. Maybe we play around Daze.
No, we just play 2.
Oh, he's going in. Playing around Daze, but this is a miracle, correct?
Got around Spell Pierce. Yeah, that is a miracle, so we see 3 Angels come down for Gray, and we just see a pass.
Yep.
Doesn't need to do much from this point.
This game looks wrapped up in short order.
Guys with silver skin, metal bits made out of flesh.
You know, Nick, now when they go up, he's going to give it a try, but short of a miracle, we know he doesn't have access to. Gray might be running away with this game.
Yeah, so we see combat step here, and
14.
Nick is going to be able to block, but it's not going to do much. We are going to see...
To what end, I wonder?
So 10, and bring Nick down to 9. And Nick's going to play it out, but there are 0 outs to the situation.
You know, here we see a lighthearted handshake. All these guys are friends. And
yeah, a couple of guys just slinging some magic cards.
Yeah.
So that was our round 3. We'll be bringing you our final round here pretty shortly. That's kind of how the games I've seen from like Rug Delver versus Miracles go. That's kind of what I expect. The Rug Delver deck just doesn't have enough ways to interact with the Miracles deck, and I think that the Miracles deck actually runs more counterspells than the Rug Delver player, and they run more removal spells than the Rug Delver player plays threats.
That seemed rough. That seemed absolutely unwinnable.
Yeah,
and I'm sure there are draws that the Rug Delver can get ahead where they have their turn 1 Delver. Gray is priced into using his removal spells into Nick's disruption.
Yeah.
But short of the God Draw, which we didn't see either game, it's pretty tough.
Yeah, not just that, but Gray needs, I think even with the Rug Delver's God Draw, as you called it, it's... The Miracle deck has to fumble. I don't think there's a way that Miracle deck has like even just a good hand against any Rug Delver hand. I think the Miracle deck's still going to win that.
Okay.
So that was our round 3. Gray being able to take that in 2 games against Rug Delver and Nick Trettel, and so we will be coming to you with round 4 here fairly shortly. So stay tuned, and thanks for watching.
Woo!